In Santa Barbara, East Beach is a place to play volleyball in the sand, and Cabrillo Boulevard is where visitors can catch a glimpse of the Bronze Dolphin Fountain or Chromatic Gate. But sitting atop a seaside bluff across from the bird refuge, hidden from view, is a grand estate that has seen few guests in the last 50 years. Locals call it the Clark Mansion, but its name is Guardo, and recently, it has gained national attention. Shrouded in privacy, multimillionaire Huguette M. Clark tucked herself away from public view for decades, while keeping close watch on her many treasures.
Oh, nobody ever met her in person. Jim Hurley was once in her New York attorney's office for about an hour, and during that hour, she called him 4 times. And what I understand the conversation on the attorney's side was, "Yes, Mrs. Clark. Oh, yes, Mrs. Clark. I'll take care of that, Mrs. Clark."
I've been handling all her affairs since 1966, about 46, 47 years. Never spoke with her. I communicated with her basically through her attorneys. I've been through 4 of them now.
Huguette Clark was clearly reclusive, but where was she conducting all of her business from? Was she locked up in Guardo, giving orders via telephone?
No, she didn't even visit. It was a summer place before her father died, and then for about 20 years, 20, 30 years after that, she and her mother would visit.
With no sight of Miss Clark, the people of Santa Barbara produced their own unfounded rumors regarding the family's history. Tourist trolley cars actually said the family couldn't conceive an heir, so they adopted an orphan, but she never married and lives to this day in Paris. Wanting to take legal action, Huguette's California attorney informed her New York attorney of these slanders.
Huguette's New York attorney discussed with her what action to take to correct these falsehoods. None, she said. Wanting to maintain her privacy at all costs, she agreed that they wouldn't make a fuss.
Although those that worked for Miss Clark could not see her, they knew that she had her eye on everything they did.
She kept an eagle eye on everything and was very particular that if something had to be repaired, it had to be with exactly the same material that originally were there.
Inside the gray French mansion, in the back of the service wing, in a room off the kitchen, on the green tile floor lies a white sheet of paper. This typeset sign bears the signature of one of the housemen and has been in place for more than a decade now. It marks the former location of a piece of furniture. On 29 November 2001, I moved a white wooden step stool from this room to the main wing elevator as an aid to rescue in case the elevator gets stuck. Signed, Harris.
She didn't even visit, but she still maintained this great interest in the place.
Left to the city of Santa Barbara upon Miss Clark's death, this 23.5-acre oceanfront palace has been locked up tighter than some banks. For a number of years, few have had a chance to see the estate in person.
It is extraordinary. You don't realize how large the place really is until you come up close to it. And it's a woman's house. It was designed, Huguette and her mother lived there, and meticulously cared for. The floors are in immaculate condition. The furniture has custom-made slip covers over them. It's not run down in the sense that it was neglected. Total contrary to that. The difference is it hasn't really been lived in. But in terms of the cleanliness, the love and care towards the building, John Douglas and his team and his predecessor really took immaculate care of the property.
Probably what we'd call state-of-the-art luxury, classical 1930s.
It's a sprawling 23-acre property with a large home and gardens, but yet it's right in the heart of Santa Barbara. Hearst Castle is beautiful and grand. It takes a while to get there, and that's all that's there.
Even family members didn't know how to get a hold of Huguette. But Paul Clark Newell Jr., Huguette's cousin, began searching for a way to contact her.
I knew of Huguette going back to my youth, and not very much about her because even within the family, very little was known about her.
What Paul would discover was that the key to contacting Miss Clark was right in front of him.
I was passing through Santa Barbara, stopped for gasoline, and on impulse I checked the telephone directory for Santa Barbara.
Listed in the phone book was her name, address, and number.
The phone was answered by John Douglas.
I got John the job about 30 years ago, and he has been very good. He's been excellent at it, in keeping the property preserved and her privacy also.
After I satisfied him as to my family relationship, he was kind enough to give me the address and telephone number for her New York attorney.
Paul had just made a breakthrough.
Oh, this is your Aunt again, and I did call the other number, but I didn't get an answer. So I'm believing that I'll call you up soon again because just now I have chicken pox of all the things to get a hold of at my age, imagine.
For Pulitzer Prize-winning author Bill Dedman, he stumbled across Huguette Clark and what would become a New York Times bestseller while house hunting 3,000 miles away in Connecticut.
It's hard to find a house to afford in Connecticut. But I was looking at the real estate listings and just amusing myself, enjoying seeing who owned the most expensive houses for sale. And for sale for $24 million, marked down from $35 million, was this house, Le Beau Chateau, 12,000 square feet on 52 acres. And it said in the town records that no one had lived there since this owner bought it in 1951. So I went over to see the caretaker. I had to see what it was about. There was no name, there was no buzzer or bell, but I reached across the wall and rapped on the window, and the caretaker came out. And he said, yes, I work for Mrs. Clark, and I've been here 20 years, and I've never met her. I just get paid by her attorney every month. And as I was leaving, he asked me a question to which I would have no idea the answer. He said, do you suppose she's been dead all these years? Well, as it turned out, this was not her nicest house by any means. She owned a home in Santa Barbara with a similar story that she hadn't visited in about 50 years.
There is much mystery surrounding Miss Clark's life, but those that knew her say she was a gentle artist with a giving heart.
She was a shy, very intelligent artist who didn't do very well with people in person. She's quite chatty and comfortable on the phone or by letter.
In 1928, she gave the city $50,000, which was a lot of money then, to create the bird refuge on what was an existing sort of salt pond, a seasonal wet spot where the bird refuge is now. She had some conditions, among them were that there would be no parking on Cabrillo between the estate and the bird refuge, that there wouldn't be any construction, that it be named for her sister, Andre.
She was relentlessly generous to friends, to employees, even to strangers.
One employee, Rudolph Yakulich, was hired by Clark to build her elaborate doll houses.
She had a great interest in animation. She had an interest in fairy tales. Her doll houses were fairy tale stories, Rapunzel and Rumpelstiltskin. I don't mean she was disconnected from reality, but she enjoyed a life of imagination.
Rudolph would have his own fairy tale ending as one benefactor of Huguette's extreme generosity and recipient of what Clark called her small gifts.
Rudolph's family was one of many to receive her small gift, a check for $20,000. Later, the little gifts grew to $30,000 and then $40,000. When Rudolph died in 2000, Huguette kept sending the checks to his widow. When his widow died, the checks kept arriving in the names of their children. All the grandchildren of Rudolph and Anna Jaklish went to good colleges, paid for by Huguette and her little people.
When her mother died, she gave Rancho Alegre, which is the Boy Scout camp across from Lake Cachuma now, in the Santa Ynez Valley.
Her attorney explained that he said to her, why don't you give money away in your will? Why are you giving it away now? And she said, well, I like giving it to people when I can see them being happy about it.
She maintained her membership in the art museum from 1949 until she died. And not only in the art museum, but in Friends of Asian Art and Friends of Contemporary Art. She really was interested in art. She was an amateur painter herself, and she's helped with donations to the Community Arts Music Association, CAMA, which brings musical performances here.
With Huguette's substantial gift to the city of Santa Barbara's arts community, her shroud of privacy will forever be replaced with a legacy known as the Guardo Foundation.
The estate and some assets and some money were left to create a new Guardo Foundation, and actually named me as one person to nominate 7 members of a 10-member initial board of directors to the New York Attorney General's office to establish as a first board of directors. It'll be up to that board to really flesh out the vision and the business plan and the possibilities of Guardo. But honestly, we never even thought it was possible that the estate wouldn't be sold.
You know, the family was trying to get 75% of the $300 million. Initially, the Attorney General's office in New York, they seemed to be, as of a year ago, seemed to be willing to just sell everything and divvy it up among the relatives. Well, over time, they changed their minds. I'm not sure just why, but they realized that there was a public interest here and supported the establishment of the foundation.
What she had in her mind was that some of her art collection might be put on permanent display there.
There's $18 million of penalties that have been assessed through gift taxes that were never paid out. The settlement paid the gift taxes, so that part is taken care of. The question is, will the IRS waive the penalties of that $18 million because the majority of the settlement is now going to charity?
The new board of a new foundation will have to decide what's their mission and how should they use this house. Should it be open to the public? Is it a museum? Or is it a place you have concerts or a school? It seems like a blank slate at this point, and an opportunity. They'll have to decide how much money they have to raise to keep it going.
It's going to be very costly to upgrade it if it can be done, and then maintenance is going to be very expensive.
What's the status of the property? As you know, Ms. Clark hadn't even been onto the property in over 50 years, and while it was meticulously cared for all that time, you know, it has not been lived in. And just sort of general questions about if you were to open up the home to the public, what are the new codes and Americans with Disabilities Access rules? I mean, there's a lot of questions, but certainly nothing that we can't have answered, but there's still that research that needs to be done.
Well, the will says that a foundation, the Guardo Foundation, is to be established for the promoting and fostering of the arts, with a capital A. It doesn't say that there's to be a museum there. It doesn't say anything at all. It doesn't say anything about whether or not the place has to be retained. If it's necessary to sell the property, then would be a very large, well-endowed foundation that would be able to make grants for the arts.
I hope a group of individuals who will do whatever possible to create this very unique place under what Huguette Clark asked for, which was to create a place to foster and promote the arts. And as opposed to just having the money go off to somewhere and no one knows, you know, there's no legacy. Here's a real opportunity to really fulfill Mrs. Clark's wishes. It's really very exciting for Santa Barbara.